It is noon, and I will go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the Community Development Commission for Monday, February 19th, 2024. Staff, could you conduct the roll call, please? Actually, I'll go ahead and do introductions first, or should we do roll call first?
Let's start with introductions.
Let's start with introductions. I'll start. My name's Robin Davis. I'm a she, her, and I've been on this commission for about 3 years plus, I think. Been the chair for the last year or so, and yeah, I'm a business owner. And what else? I've been a resident of Albany for about 5 years or so. That's it.
And Chair Davis is the Human Relations Commission liaison.
Thank you. Yes, I am on that commission as well, and
Thank you for that.
got it.
Nice.
Continue.
Hi, I'm Alex Johnson II. I am currently serving the city of Albany as mayor. I'm also a business owner who specializes in insurance from the 20 states. And other than that, I'm having fun.
I'm Bessie Johnson. I'm a retired tax collector from way back, and actually a retired counselor too, which wasn't my choosing, but that's what it was. And just happened to be on, really learning a lot from this committee.
Good.
It's a learning curve, let me tell you. So just glad to be here.
I'm Ron Green. I'm retired from Community Services Consortium about, I guess it's been 13 years ago, involved in some other things here in the city of Albany. I'm on the City Planning Commission, for which I'm representing on this commission. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
And Chair Davis, good to meet you. I've caught a couple of the meetings in preparation for this one online, and trying to get up to speed with the matrix and the scoring process. Staff members, Beth and Ann, have been very kind to kind of help me along. I'm still way behind the curve as far as understanding how all of the HUD things and our local requirements apply to what's being presented here. So you're not going to hear very much from me at this meeting, and probably not for the next meeting, because I will be in Texas, where I grew up. Haven't seen my grandchildren in 3 years.
Oh, it's time.
So even though I don't like to use the airplane anymore, and nor should any of us really, when you really think about it. But I tried to get the train to work, and it just will not work in this country. So if we move to another country, I could see my grandchildren by rail. Anyway.
Stay away from the door.
So thank you all for having me, and I promise to shut up now. Jim?
My name is Jim Cole. We met the other night,
Yes.
and I'm just starting my second year in this commission. I'm a retired engineer, HP engineer, and I've lived in Albany for 32 years. And so it's nice to be able to kind of get a little bit more involved now.
My name is Larry Tim. This is my first year on the commission. I'm a retired community development director, city planning director in Wisconsin and Colorado, and I've lived here about 5 years.
I am on my third year as well. Like we had a big rotation there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
I'm a licensed realtor, but I really specialize in creating affordable housing for people in transition and just low income families. I have a family house, a men's house, 2 men's houses, and a women's house, and the apartments above margin, and then some other projects. So really just like creatively putting community together in a home, and then having the costs be extremely low for them so they can survive right now. And that's been really fun. I have 2 little kids, just precious, and a great husband. And sometimes, but I've also been in Albany for 32 years when I was born until now. I think I'm also the vice president here.
Yes, you are the vice chair.
Vice chair. I've never really had to access that power yet because you're always here, which is I'm very grateful for. That is it.
Right. Emma, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Emma Dean. I've been on this commission for a little over a year now. I've lived in Albany my entire life. I'm the executive director of a local nonprofit that is also serving two other counties, Benton and Lincoln County.
And you guys all know me. I'm Beth Freelander. I work for the city and I'm staff liaison for this commission.
Is John
I'm
on?
Sane, but my name's.
All right, let's go ahead and conduct the roll call, man.
Commissioner Stubbs. Present. Commissioner Johnson, second.
Here.
Commissioner Tim.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Bailey has an excused absence. Commissioner Cole.
Here.
Commissioner Chair Davis.
Here. Chair.
Right.
You changed your name.
Commissioner Dean.
Here.
Commissioner Dean.
Here.
And Commissioner Oblito.
Let's see. Okay, looks like we have a roll call. The next item on the agenda is the election of the 2024 chair and vice chair positions, of which I have a script for here. It's now time to elect a chair and vice chair for the Community Development Commission for 2024. We'll go ahead and open nominations. Are any nominations for the position of that chair?
I'd like to nominate Courtney Stubbs as chair.
Okay.
As chair of what?
This commission.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Okay, so
You are, yeah.
any opposed? I should have asked for any opposed. Okay. None? Carried? Very good.
Okay.
If I had a gavel, I'd pass it to you. It's up there though.
It's a.
I have a Thor's hammer.
It's really nice.
It's like,
Do you accept the nomination?
Are there any other nominations that we should consider?
I guess not.
Then I accept.
All right.
What a privilege.
Just trying to read my script here. Okay. Okay, so one person is nominated. We go to unanimous consent since I've got to read the script. Since there was only one nomination for the position of chair, we will now vote to elect the name of the chair. We did vote. All those in favor said yes. There were no oppositions. If the majority votes aye or yes, you have been elected. Congratulations. Now we're going to move on to the vice chair position. You may now go ahead and take over the meeting after we elect the vice chair position. So are there any nominations for vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Robin Davis as vice chair.
Okay. Accept that nomination.
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor of that?
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Okay,
Just switch seats.
that motion is carried and
Now to the approval of minutes.
now we go to the approval of minutes. So I think we've completed that. So as far as it sounds looks like it. Okay, great.
Do we have anybody
I
that
would move for the approval of the minutes as presented.
I'll second that.
right?
Yes, that's the vote.
Is there a motion?
Oh, do we have a motion to vote to approve the minutes?
Yeah, that was the Motion to question. approve, second, and then you vote.
Yeah.
A motion.
Yeah, motion is second.
Motion second.
All those in favor say aye.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We have a
No,
unanimous.
those opposed say no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We sure we don't want to do this?
Well, you're in the hot seat. Not too late.
Those
You'll learn.
opposed? We have a motion to pass.
It passed.
It has passed
Yep.
Unanimous.
unanimously.
All right.
And now you can turn it over to me.
I would love to turn it over.
And also Robin will be more than helpful.
Please, Robin.
I will.
This is
Yeah.
really
Very supportive.
big.
That's an assumption on my part, but yeah. Yeah.
So we're just gonna dive right into, the evaluation of the applications. So hopefully that's coming up now. I will give an update that, Chance decided to withdraw their application. They realized just the timing wasn't, maybe gonna work as well for their project as they had thought. So I took that out of the table here, so because there's no need to consider that. And I took that out of the scoring, and I do have the scores that I received, so we could start there if you'd like, or we can also start with talking about which bit of funding allocation you'd like to kind of roll with, so to speak. I provided in the packet some different options. So their sense of whether you'd like to start with kind of the concept of how to make the decision, or whether you'd like to start with the actual application.
I guess I'd like to see the scores so far, and do you have any further information on how much you might be funded, or it's still up in the air?
I checked, but we don't have. It's not.
Plan on less, so,
Yeah.
Count on less, that's what you're thinking?
that's what I would say,
Yes.
plan on less.
So you
We
gave
can
us
plan-
some numbers.
Yeah, those are rough estimates, so we can plan on a bit less than that, and then also have kind of a contingency plan, like, should we receive more than this, we would like it to go towards the top scoring applicant, or, you know, unfortunately, the top scoring applicant for public service and the top scoring applicant for non-public service, something along those lines to kind of get us excessive. Should the numbers be dramatically different, how would you like to handle that?
So it looks like, I mean, if Chance withdraws, it looks like our total requests for non-public service applicants is less than we actually might likely get funded,
Yes.
right?
Mhm. So those have the potential of being funded more than perhaps what they have asked for.
Oh, really?
Or we can see if there's a parks project that
Yeah.
could use the remainder. I'm not sure.
And so right now we don't have a sense of what that number's gonna look like, correct?
We get a sense.
No, we don't, so I'm gonna run some numbers on what a lower amount might be rather than last year's, but I think if you guys start talking about scores, the main area you guys will have to talk about is public service applications, because we have far more in requests regardless of what our final number is than what is available for public services due to that 15% cap, so.
Do you have these printed out?
So I have the scores that I received, and then I've got the average, and then below that, I've got the average that excludes both the high and low score for that. In case there was dramatic outliers, but the average excluding high and low there weren't huge differences, no. So maybe a few points for creating housing, that's probably the biggest difference.
I bet you did that.
Nice to see.
So I have to admit, I was so swamped this last 2 weeks, I haven't had a chance to put my numbers in. I have a sketch of what I want to put in, and I'll do that probably this week. There's some hard choices to make. Yeah.
So right off the bat, it does seem like Jackson Street had the highest average score, which is also true after excluding highs and lows. Just kind of sharing some of the observations that I'm making, or that I've made. And look like the YMCA is kind of on the lower end of scores. Just for context. But, you know, obviously, application scoring above 90 out of 110, no one had a, you know, dramatically poor application. So, like you guys are saying, difficult choices.
Just a thought for the card to ask, for the fence. I'm just wondering if that is something that we could come to an agreement on, if it's like such a low amount of a need. if we could easily provide that for them.
So that's in the non-public services group, so
Okay.
there is no competition right now for those funds since, Chance had just property.
So they could be
So we
provided
only
as granted,
funded
as requested.
So basically, we can fully fund
Those
all of the non-public service ones and still have money left over. It's very likely.
Just
No
depending on the
guarantee,
level.
right?
So that takes out Cardva and,
Well,
Deb Northwest.
oh, they're right there, I'm the blue, okay.
So we're gonna remove Chance from that, cross that out. So I have a clarification question, Chair. The family connections, the LBCC, is that the Early Child Development Center or is that something different?
Yeah, that's the, yes, they work with the, early learning, doing the childcare.
Okay, so they just had the grand opening the other day. Yeah, I was there, okay.
The gentleman who presented.
Brian Steinhaus, yes.
Okay.
These
The
funds,
program that we funded this past year, they're in the midst of doing it right now, and he's applying for funding to continue that program next year.
is specifically for that child, that,
In-home child
In-home
provider
childcare,
businesses, yeah, to support those, starting parts.
Have you seen the increase or improvement as far as the number of in-home daycare since we started that, since this whole thing?
I know he's done quite a bit of recruiting. I don't have the numbers yet from him, how many have completed their kind of course on how to become an in-home child care and go through the licensing piece. But it sounded like he had, several people signed up for that program.
Yeah,
But I can certainly,
my notes of he had 11 new registered
right,
providers and 41 have inquired, so
Yeah.
that's pretty
thing.
good.
so that's, yeah,
That's pretty good. And it's much needed.
yes.
Is this like open discussion time
Yeah.
moment? Cause just I remember a thought that came up last year when we were having the same conversation was, how would I say it? Like, for example, the YMCA and the Boys and Girls Club, we had this debate in the sense that it was like, these are bigger corporate type of businesses that have a lot of funding, but they serve the larger portion of our community, and we want to keep that relationship with them. Like,
Right.
we want to be supporting as a city, even if they do have other funds options. So just curious on that thought. Do we continue? I know it's really based on application and purpose and what the function is for. I just know that we had thought about that last year. Like, we always want to allocate some funds to them who support what they're doing on a continual basis.
See, and my thought on that was, it was the reason for the request that I scored them low, because there are different things that, if they wanted to use the money that they could use it for, that would, help everybody and not just the Spanish speaking people. And that put it across for me, I mean, just low
Yeah.
source, yeah.
So one thing to consider is that a lot of the agencies are eligible for other sources of funding. Now, Boys and Girls Club and YMCA, they do a lot of fundraising. They have a lot of variety of programs, but like Jackson Street is eligible for there's a lot of money for homelessness and youth homelessness, for example. So, I mean, I think that you're on to something, what do you want to do? And, you've got one agency that scored a little bit lower than some of the others. But, if you, I think it was it Larry or Jim, one of you asked really good questions, to the applicants when they were here a couple weeks ago or a month ago. Would you be able to continue your service or provide your service if you didn't get the funding or didn't receive the full amount? So, I mean, I think, we have to keep that in mind as well. And it sounded like almost all the agencies were still going to provide the service, maybe at a slightly reduced amount. So then it goes back to what are the needs that are most needed within the community? And it, there's sort of a lot. I mean, there's homelessness, but there's sort of trying to address the cycle of poverty and that kind of stuff when it's early. And so there are different things that the agencies are all addressing. Yeah, I think that the scores are just a starting point, and then it might be good to think about, if you want to talk about how to go about public services where you guys will have to, let's just say we have about 50,000 and there's 6 agencies. So, and one of the agencies Cascade West Council of Governments always ask for,
Everything. Well,
no,
no,
they only ask for like
4,000 or
$4,000
something.
or
Yeah.
$5,000, very small amount, for what they do. So, the other agent, there are a couple agencies that ask for way more than we have funding for, so, we need to have a cap in the future probably, but, you know, if you were to think about them all having asked for 20,000 or something, if you guys wanna talk about the different ideas that might be a good way to think about that if you guys are already, but if you want to talk about the scores and talk about each agency, maybe work through discussions, pros and cons of each agencies, if you want to do that, and then you can go, well, out of the ones that are in there, how do they rank? And
Sure.
do you want to fund all of them, or do you want to use some different options that I've presented in the packet?
Stan, is there a way that we could get a copy of this, the total scores? That, because it's hard to read.
It's really hard to read.
Like
Where-
this one's
this
on your.
one.
Yeah, because up there, when you put the numbers up there, I mean, I am 59, of course, and I'm like,
Well, I
Uh-huh.
guess it's somewhere to think
I thought,
Right.
of course, today I sit down here.
Right.
That would be great.
Okay, well, I'll go up and print off.
And I try to zoom in, but then it's like you don't see the whole thing, but for now, let's
They do have,
start here.
they do have this in front of them, so we
Okay.
can have this.
Is this helpful on the screen, or would you prefer?
Yeah.
I'm fine with the screen.
Very young
I'm fine with
eyes.
this.
Okay, so we'll start here and then we can push it back to scores.
This is where I sat.
So, yeah. I have in the back of my head. What are your thoughts on that, like seeing this over the last few years?
Well, I think I understand that there are large organizations that help a lot of people, and that is a great thing. And they do take in money from lots of sources, including raise their own revenue, significant amounts of revenue through memberships and that sort of thing. But also, I'm aware that there are outside funding sources that are at play here. So I would not tend to personally discount anyone for having access to other funding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, because they've made an application, they've said, we want this money from you. And we gotta assume that's a sincere application and they do need it. And if the application is decent or not full of holes, then I would tend to put them on the same. I scored everybody pretty high this year. I noticed for everyone, very little variance in them, but anyways, so that's my feedback. I have a question. You know, the governor just received all this additional funding for homelessness, and a lot of it went to Lynn County specifically. Assuming some of that is going to cascade down from the county government to local.
Actually, I don't think much went to the county.
Really, it was
Yeah.
2.5 million.
2.9.
Yeah, a lot came
It
in.
came to the county, but it didn't come to the county. It came to organizations within the county.
Yeah.
Right,
It was
not through the
dispersed to
county.
Who
agencies.
disperses
Yeah.
that?
Oh,
That was through the MAC group, right?
Yeah, MAC
That's
group.
what you're referring
Mhm,
to.
yes.
So, CSC is kind of heading up that multi-agency coordination.
Right.
Team, and then that. There's a, much like, as we discussed, there was some mechanism for evaluating. They had agencies apply for that funding, and
Nice.
then there was an evaluation, and then funding decisions were made in terms of what agencies would be
Nice.
allocated
it'd be
funds
kind of
for what
nice to
projects.
know where it's spread out too.
Well, that list is supposed to be coming from Counselor Smith to us. City council, as soon as I get it, I'll send it to this commission.
Okay, that'd be great.
You know, it'd be interesting to know if any of these folks, other than
Yeah,
Community
I-
Services Consortium themselves,
Right,
received funding.
I know most of the funding went to Faith, Hope and Charity.
There's open charity.
They got 2.4, I think.
No, look at 900, I think.
Okay, but they have.
They already had money. They got
have
900,
2.4,
yes.
right? They got.
Because she read it off at the Lynn County the joint session with Lynn County. She actually read off the entire list of where the money went.
Mhm.
Nice.
Lynn County, mental health didn't get any money. Apparently, they require a urinalysis of the person to come in for services, and that was a real detractor for some people, so.
For the program specifically.
Yeah.
What, so, would you
group of citizens provides citizen oversight to that officer. Is there one?
The CSC,
It's.
yeah.
Macro, okay. Yeah.
Which, Ron, that's where you come from, right?
Yep, well, years ago,
Yeah.
but so the MAC is I mean, that's
Agency.
multi-agency,
Coordinating team.
and so who's that? I mean,
Yeah,
CSC leads it, but
a ton of the, like, homeless services providers across the county.
And I appointed Marilyn Smith to that commission on behalf of the city council.
Do they have public
They
meetings?
have.
Yes.
and that's Lynn County, we're talking about Lynn County only.
Yeah, they have some commissioners and, Counselor Smith is on it.
Yeah, I appointed her.
So it's not only agency providers, there's some other leadership.
And is there published their disbursement or the news of this 2.9 million?
Yeah,
Is that on a website somewhere?
I'll have to ask. It may be,
Yeah, I can go back and get some information from the meetings I've attended. I don't have it off the top of my head. But I know that some of the providers in our area have paid this, but I don't remember how much.
Well, I kind of contradicted myself. I said it didn't matter. And then I asked the question about it, but I think it's good to know, just good
There
to
is a-
know. Yeah.
I'm coming in, yeah.
So,
Thank you. Any other thoughts from
there's 2 pages to this?
people about?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got some thoughts. I think, my approach would be to, let's say you had with $50,000, I would rather fully fund as many as we could rather than cut each one back a little bit, because if you're fully funded, you're gonna accomplish something. If you're cut back, we don't know what they're gonna accomplish. So I prefer that. And I'll put in a plug for a couple of them. I really like Jackson Street. The thing with Boys and Girls Club, a reason I didn't score that as high, it's only for 10 weeks. That's
Yeah.
all. Then it's over. I like Helping Hands because it's very tailored to specific people and their needs, which seems to make a lot of sense to me, that's a good way to deal with people's issues, is look at each person's situation and try to work out a program for them. So I thought that was great. So that's why I ranked Jackson Street really high, and Helping Hands. And with the Coat, what was good about them is that they say they're going to serve 850 people, and the cost per person is $24 per person. So I thought that was pretty good.
Good thoughts.
Question, along the bottom, what's the difference between the bolded totals and the non-bolded?
Sorry, yes, I did add that on the screen up here. So the bolded total is just the average, and the number below that is the average, but excluding the high and the low.
Oh, okay, it's a statistical move.
Yeah, just to
okay.
see, if there was big outliers swaying something, but by and large, there wasn't a huge discrepancy.
Thank you.
Relative to like partially funding some of them, I do remember going through some of the talks or listening to some of the presentations that their response to their scalability, in other words, if they didn't get all the money, varied, right? Some of them said, well, if we got half the money, we would just do half the service. Whereas others said, if we got half the money, we'd have to go get more money to be able to do what we wanted to do, right? And so it seems to me like, I don't know exactly how we prioritize that, but it seems like it'd be more effective to give money if we know it's going to be used, like, and just scale back the services rather than do we really know what if they don't get that other funding? Would they repurpose that money? Would they not use it or something like that? Knowing that the money is going to be used effectively would be,
So I will say that, in the past, and what I would plan to do this year is, depending on if fully funding them, we'll assume, of course, they'll accept the money. If we can't fully fund them, I'll ask them, if you're funded at this amount, would you still accept the award? Can you still proceed with your project?
So they have to prove over time how that money is spent?
You should.
So everything's done on a reimbursement basis. So we see how they spent the money. Often for the public services, it's for staff time, not always, but usually. And so that they'll use the amount of money up to the staff time that they can, and then either they'll find another funding source or whatever their plan B was. But we do ask them because we don't want to allocate money towards a, project that if the money that we give them is so small that they can't use it, that helps nobody, right? So I will, I assume that someone in this group will probably be partially funded, and I will ask them if they can accept that funding. Does that help, like, alleviate that?
Oh, yeah.
concern?
Yeah, I mean, if it's something that we're looking at, so in that case, if someone responded, oh, no, that's all we get, then we'd rather not bother. Because we don't want to deal with it, it's not enough to handle the paperwork or whatever. Would we come back and reallocate funds?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and this is the lowered amount?
Oh, no, I didn't realize, but it's the amount that benefits, already done. I didn't, take time to try to modify. But if you're thinking that you have $50,000, this just tells you how much the grant requests for, and sorry to butt in, but remember that a lot of people ask for more money than they probably should have. I mean, if we had a cap at 20,000, in the early years, we were like, hey, in case we don't get any applications, we shouldn't have a cap, or if there's a certain need that shines through, let's not have a cap, but we want to fund at least 2. That was the initial. I mean, we don't, you've got about $50,000 and $174,000 in requests. So if you fully fund anybody, it's going to probably wipe out the remaining balance, and then you have to think about, other sources of funding. Would the program continue if they didn't receive the full amount? And so I think that all of the applicants said that they would be able to still provide the program if they weren't fully funded. But I do think it's not fair to consider a proportion of somebody who asked for 60, or over 50 or over 30 or more $1,000. If some people were really just trying to get, we know this is competitive, we're just going to ask for what, I'm not gonna say reasonable, but they probably purposely knew that they weren't gonna get much more than 12 or 15 or 10 or whatever $1,000. So,
Some people are more conservative in their ask, and some people are more aspirational.
we're just gonna ask for everything and we'll see what we get.
Yeah, the
And
shit's
so,
fall.
that's just something to keep in mind. The only other thing I'd say is that Jackson Street Youth Services got $150,000 out of a special pot of money that we got a couple of years ago. They're struggling to spend the CDBG money and that money,
Like appropriately, like.
Well,
To the thing it needs to go.
they wanted money to help pay for the final expenses to rehab their shelter. Well, I can't pay for anything that's already happened,
Okay.
so the council still wanted to provide them funding, but it's for some of the services that they provide and expenses that they have, but they asked for CDBG money to cover some of the personnel expenses, and so I mean, I think I'm like, hey, you guys can do rent or not rent, heating and cooling and do some other, things. It doesn't have to be public services. They're starting to catch up, but they're still spending down another pot of money that the city has allocated to them that's not in the CDBG realm, but
Yeah, that's good.
that you guys did actually review, it was a couple years ago, some of you weren't on the commission, but I think all of the applicants, have worthy things, but that's just something that came to my mind when I was writing onto the copier. So.
One of the questions I have is about the senior living assistance for the COG, OCW, whatever. COG. And I mean, that seems like quite a small amount, and I know COG's pretty big. And so I just wonder, do you know anything about their situation?
So that's some other reliable funding sources for the program.
They don't have any funding sources so basically you've got senior volunteers that are they're the companions. And this money pays a small stipend to offset their costs for gas, the vehicle miles traveled.
Yeah.
They don't have, these are volunteers that don't get any money, but the volunteers happen to also be seniors, and a lot of them are at 200% or below the poverty level. So they're actually low income seniors that are helping
Low income
homebound
seniors. Yeah.
So what I remember, and I didn't read through the applications for this meeting, but that they don't have money to offer a little bit of support to these people who are using their own cars to deliver food and do that. So they have funding to support the program overall, but they don't have funding to support the Lomond
Okay.
seniors that are helping the other Lomond seniors.
So basically, it's the older people who can are helping those who can't.
Right.
A
Okay,
lot of my clients help other folks with that.
yeah, I mean, to me, that is just really
Mhm.
worthy of, I mean, $4,000. I don't know how,
It's no
with the
brainer.
price of gas, I don't know how much that's gonna go, but still.
Yeah, so I mean, they stretch a little bit of money a long way.
Yes, they
So, I mean, that's a program you might want to fully fund. I mean, I think, you know, in some years it hasn't been fully funded, but you know, it's one that isn't asking for as much. But,
Right.
you know, it's up to you guys if you want to give everybody a little and do percentages, or if you want to, I don't know how you want to do it. So.
And that's something also you might want to add, like you put Creative Housing Coalition -coat. Might be put hyphen where it's for, so we, for a better understanding.
Oh, yeah,
So,
yeah.
just my feedback.
Makes sense.
You got a cell in there, look.
Yeah.
So Code was asking for funding, and this came up, and I asked a question in the, when they were presenting that they serve a lot of people in Lynn County, and a lot of them are homeless residents that are from Albany. But one way to ensure that they're helping Albany residents might be to tailor that program or pay for funds for the case management when they're actually assisting an Albany resident or former, you know, homeless Albany resident with the services and getting into housing. And I mean, I don't know that that would change their ask at all, but that was just something that I was trying to figure out how we would collect the data and information that we need from the participants and then know that they were Albany residents.
Yeah, because I know that's one of the questions I asked her, you know, was like, are they from Albany? And she says, well, most of them are. Well,
Mhm.
I want to help the most,
Only residents.
you know, because if you have the services, everybody, people will come in.
Mhm.
And they'll just, and Albany seems to be a place where,
Because we're the hub,
yep,
we're the hub,
yep.
one county hub.
So you saying we can provide a qualified award from the grant, saying here, you have been granted, but here's what you need to provide and to support that.
Yeah, I mean,
documentation.
paying for the services, and I think their funds are going to pay for the services and not for the food purchased, you know, so I think it's already structured that way, but I think in terms of who they're helping with the services and getting housed, it might just mean a different performance outcome. While you guys are talking, I can read through their grant and see if.
Could you resend the grant? She don't have a computer with her. Could you resend the grant applications? I cannot find that email.
It's in this packet, so if you go to the Community Development Commission page, it's the, I just have it pulled up in front of me, but we could send that PDF out if
No,
it's.
if I could just download, that'd be great, because I'm looking at, which packet was it in?
Should be February 2nd, is that the date?
Yeah,
That was
Okay, this is my old head just
I turned it over right now.
January, so I have
February 27th.
there's a January 22nd, February 5th, and February 19th.
I've got it open.
January 22nd.
It's January 22nd, yeah,
Okay, because
sorry.
that's my fault. I thought I'd saved it and I didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Okay, I found it.
Yeah, no, we probably should have done that for the meeting, just in hindsight, but sometimes it's easier than finding stuff online.
So is there a sense, I'm hearing kind of some discrepancy, some concerns around maybe partial funding, some desire to fully fund the top applicant. So I'm trying to, where do we feel like we're at as a commission in terms of method?
What,
I know we've got some feelings about what applications we'd like or don't feel strongly about, but I want to kind of settle on what's the method that we want to use first, and I think that will help us in kind of phase 2 of figuring out, well, how does that apply to what we've got going on right now?
I do have one question before we move on is, you know, a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, there was a Department of Justice investigation at Helping Hands.
Mhm.
And what is the status of that investigation? Because I will not feel comfortable allocating any funds to them if that is still an active investigation.
Mhm.
So the DOJ with Albany Helping Hands.
Yeah, they concluded their investigation and gave Helping Hands a list of things that they needed to work on, and they've been working on that.
Okay.
So they have concluded their investigation.
Yeah, I remember
We
the
could get a copy
presenter,
of that, But
the presenter said we've received something to the effect that we received it. We've taken those things to, and we can say that, we're working towards that or.
Mhm.
yeah, like they've got separate bank accounts now for the church versus the shelter. I think they're working on their board membership or bylaws and things like that. So, yeah, we could, get a copy of that, the J information and send it out. But
Yeah, last year we took them out of,
Yes.
this process just because it was open. So,
Yeah, it was open and active, ongoing, yeah.
so now it's not, and they're addressing it, and so they would have full reason to be considered.
Yeah, because if they're working toward what used to happen, because they had, on Highway 20 out there, they had their wood, service, they had their gardening service and stuff where people were working there, the, residents were working there, earning money and basically helping with the expenses and stuff. And that just all went by the wayside, but apparently when all this stuff went on. So if they're working toward that, that would help their income. And then I think maybe we'd feel better about helping them, but you gotta get it up to speed to where they help themselves a little bit too. And then it always bothers me that people are there for 10 years.
That's my next question was, are they receiving new
With
people?
that.
I mean, code turns over, every of this organization there is seeing different people all the time. And are they seeing the same people, reallocating for the same people? I mean, if you've been there 4, 5, 6, 7 years, there's a system that's broken.
Go ahead.
Thank you. The request that they're making is for a pathway to independence. That's the program they're talking about.
Yeah.
Does anyone know, is that an existing program or is this proposed?
it's proposed to try to help move people out of the shelter. They've had something similar a couple of years ago,
This
but
program does not exist. at
it
this
doesn't right now.
Okay.
It sounds like they're acknowledging the problem that they've got long-term, not emergency residents staying there. And they are thinking that this might help move
Might be
people
a
along.
fix,
Now,
yeah.
I don't know enough about who they would hire, capacity and the performance numbers, but certainly that is a goal, is to try to reduce in a perfect world, we have the shelter needs that we have, or it'd just be for super emergency situations. And one of the issues is, of course, we don't have enough affordable housing.
I did, I did meet with them last week, and, the goal is to get houses that have 5 bedrooms in it and get people out of the shelter into kind of like what I do, like community housing, independent living. Not to make them continually transition onto their own in their life, but you can take a 10-year resident from the shelter, move them into a home independent setting. That's great.
Yes.
And let them live there forever if they're successful. And then they're also paying a portion of
The
rent.
services.
And then you're opening up emergency shelter spots again. So they have that process of wanting to purchase some homes
Yes, and that's
to
the
get some
way,
houses happening.
to me, that's the way it should work, because if they have the beds filled, then the city, it handcuffs the city as to what they can do with the people on the streets, because if there's no bed available, then there's nothing they can do with them.
Right.
So, it's half of this and half of that.
I just want to go on record by saying, I'm not, in favor of putting, cuffs on any organization before long-term usage of their system, because I know that there are significant segments of the population who just have no ability to earn any money, and any income that comes in from outside sources, whether it be the government or anything, is such a small amount that even to have to pay for food and to et cetera, is really difficult. So I just want to say I'm not in favor of.
It's very true. There's a small percentage of people that can live at the shelter forever, and there is no other equation for them. There's isn't.
It's a tent in the woods.
Yeah. And then there's a proportion of people that, you know, how do we work with them to get them into, just out of emergency shelter
Yes.
and into some type of successful independent living?
So my concern again, like what Robin just said, Commissioner Davis just said, is that there's people that could possibly be gaming the system by saying, and then that means that locks someone else out of those
Yeah.
services. Not sure. How do they sort through that? Or is it? I just hope that people that actually need the services are getting the services or have access to them without somebody's, like a guy called me and says, I'm a long-term resident of Albany Helping Hands. I have a problem. I'm like, well, what's your problem? You know, but they were complaining about their cell phone coverage or some, it was ridiculous. I think they were on some kind of drugs or something. But I'm hoping that the monies we allocate to these organizations help transition from street to shelters, more permanent housing, and then hopefully permanent housing. But how do we monitor that? Is that we're putting the money towards
I
it?
certainly think that's a reflection of our priority, right? That we want people to have affordable housing and we want people to exit, you know, unsheltered homelessness. And I think part of the question here is how much is one organization to blame for people needing those services and maybe not having the next step readily available. And perhaps it sounds like Albany Helping Hands is trying to create a program to facilitate that pipeline better.
Mhm.
And I also think like the fact that that pipeline is broken is not only a reflection of what our shelter services do, right? That there's a lot of factors in there that make it difficult for someone to transition out of the shelter that have nothing to do with the shelter themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I actually thought what they were doing with that particular program was, it's almost like, oh, they're not doing that now, right? Like that should be an integral part of what they're doing there, is having something organized and deliberate about moving people on. Because I mean, it does seem like there's always going to be some of the population that will be there long term, but also I know he spoke about the fact that they do have a flux, right? And some of them, and they want to be able to make that more effective. So it seemed like to me like that was a really good thing to bring on, because that could actually be alleviating homelessness.
It's like, this is kind of the direction we're hoping that they would be doing it, the very thing that they're asking funding for.
Yeah.
I really like the chair's perspective of moving them to the general living in like one place, you know, 5 or 6. Yeah, I mean, I think that is what you need, because nobody can afford by themselves. And unless they're, I don't know if they're getting state services, or what they're getting. And to me, that adds up too, you know, like, okay, if they're totally not getting anything, which I can't imagine, you're probably on the Oregon Health Plan and all this stuff, and so I don't know. It's just, but I like the idea of, it's kind of like a dorm living.
Yeah, well, all of those like case by case scenarios, we can have no say in and no management in or anything, but like on an overall scale, this is a very long-term shelter that has served our community for a long, long time.
I know.
And they're transitioning staff and they're in a big switch, and they're the ones, and Chance and some others that are like in that position.
So like give them a chance this year.
Chance.
Not chance.
Giving a helping hand.
Give them a helping hand this year, and then see what they do with it and get reports, you know. I mean, I'd be okay with that, because the gentleman that was here, he seems so new to it, and like, he's trying his best. And what do you do? And I do know they have pretty good board of directors.
Teacher from a firehouse.
Yeah, exactly, you know.
Seriously.
And so I don't want to hit him when he's down. And so maybe that, you know, so that's where this talking really helps, because I was thinking this way and now I'm thinking a little bit different. So yeah, I think that might be a good way to go. Give him a chance. Sorry.
Can I just share in general as a shelter provider?
Yes. Oops, sorry.
So, yeah. So we do have people getting stuck in our systems, right? People are getting stuck in shelter. People that have severe and persistent mental health, they don't have a next step. They need a lot of support. We're serving people, seniors, medically fragile, people that are going through chemo, dialysis, all of these things. And shelters are the space that they get stuck because there's nowhere that can care for them. There's not an open bed. in a care facility. There's not enough supportive housing for severe and persistent mental health. So we see a ton, sex offender housing, things like that. We do see a lot of people getting stuck in our shelter system, and it takes an entire team, right? Like multiple staff, multiple agencies working to help one person transition out of shelter. And sometimes that takes months, years. And there are a handful of people that it's like, this is where you will be for the rest of your life because it is where you can stay alive and function. And there is literally no other step available.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emma.
I just want to say, one more thing about Albany Helping Hands. I had scored them low and I had a issue with their ability to separate church and mission. And obviously Department of Justice had that same issue. But it seems like they're taking actions to correct that. So yeah, I think we should fund them something. As far as the methodology
I'm gonna
goes.
bring us back to this page here,
Okay.
and I'm gonna remind you that I haven't heard anybody say there's something we shouldn't fund. And right now, we have this $174,000 ask, and we think we have $50,000.
I wish we knew that number.
So,
I do have someone I don't want to fund.
so I'm trying to move us forward to how do we make these numbers work?
Okay, can I?
Yes.
And I'm not saying I don't want to fund them, but a 10-week program for the YMCA, I'm trying to understand how that is in.
That was the Boys and Girls Club.
I'm sorry, thank you so much. $51,000 to Boys and Girls Club. Help me understand. Great program. I love them. You know, I grew up there. I get it. But is that in line with our purpose here?
I
I
don't
support
think so
that.
either.
Commissioner Stubbs, I think we're all in alignment with that.
Yeah,
Okay.
you know, it's just because it's just temporary. I mean, some of these others might be temporary too. The money doesn't go so far, but I kind of agree. They probably could find the money from other sources for that program. And
Yeah. Will that program continue on
without
easily without this? And that's just a thought.
Is that program to fund their like summer childcare?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think I hear that it's 10 weeks, but I think looking at how big of an impact that is, right? We're serving low-income families that enable their parents to go to work and not have to worry about a huge payment for childcare. I agree, 10 weeks is not a long time, but potentially that's like a generational impact is one we're allowing parents to continue to work while their children are somewhere safe. And a thing that we're seeing a lot with the population of people I serve is that adverse childhood trauma and experiences where kids didn't have safe places or were experiencing trauma, and that's kind of led them into where they are as adults typically. So I think that program could be a lifeline for some families, even though it's not super long term.
That's good. That's great to hear,
Yeah,
actually.
great perspective.
I
And
I haven't been a father of little kids in years, so, yeah.
I guess that's where it comes down to is that program going to continue this in the exact same fashion without these funds? And can we tell? Do we know that?
So I think all the people said, if you weren't fully funded, would you be continuing the program? I mean, I think that
They all
what
said yes.
they said was that, I mean, they may not be able to offer a reduced amount. I don't remember exactly, but Boys and Girls Club may not be able to offer as many scholarships for some of the low-income families for the summer care. I was just trying to go through and look at, so I think somebody brought up a point that, and it might have been Commissioner Stubbs said, what are the priorities you guys want to fund this year? And are they in our current strategic plan? And there's different ways to support low and moderate income people, but and that's sort of the general catch-all for the public services category. But I think that obviously looking at what those consolidated plan goals are, and I'm just trying to pull them up so I can could read through them. I just, I might do that for those. I don't know if you have those handy, but if that's helpful, I could read through those. I mean, if there's, because one of the first score of 10 points is how well does it address a consolidated plan priority?
So I guess not, that plan priority would be, needed services.
Right, but I want them to be reminded of all of the consolidated plan goals, so I'm just trying to find where that is.
And while she's looking for that, I would also,
Yeah.
I would not go for the YMCA, their proposed reason.
Yeah, they said, they would only be able to help 10 people and they've asked for over 50,000. I mean, that's $5,000 a person. That's the most expensive request we've got here.
And there are other ways that they can learn English or whatever, yeah.
The wise.
Yes.
So, I mean, this is where if we had a cap of, let's just say it was $20,000 and you were looking at, well, how much of that amount might you want to fund if you're looking at that, that's something to think about. But what I remember Chris Reese saying was that right now they're paying, other programs are paying for the Spanish speaking childcare. And as more people enroll, it'll become self-sustaining. So they're not going to come back and ask for that same amount, you know, for any amount. And he said that any amount would help offset the costs that they have to provide that Spanish-speaking childcare provider. And I mean, I think all of them said we would do reduced services. But I mean, if you want to take some people off the list, it's helpful for us to also have reasons why, because we have to bear the news to, you know, sorry, you're not going to receive funding. And then the scores are helpful too, because we can go, hey, we look, you know, you guys look at, here's how they scored, and maybe we're not quite ready to make a final decision on stuff. You know, it's just whether we can have another meeting, an extra meeting in a couple of weeks. But that's something to think about too, and we could provide you with different materials to help you make that decision.
So even in the concept of like giving just hypothetically $20,000 instead of the $51,000.
Well, I mean, you only have $50,000, and so it would just,
On those two.
that would mean really nobody would get, I mean, if you're wanting to fund everybody, that was
Yeah.
one of the first questions, and then there's an interest in maybe not funding everybody. So then if you want to take some folks out, you could talk about that today, and then we can look at who's remaining, you know, for funding, and then we can look at, we've got 50,000 and here's what they asked for, and how you want to go about it. I had just done some quick numbers if you were interested in funding everybody a little bit. COG didn't ask for that much, so if you fully funded them at 4,000, it would leave $9,200 average for each of the remaining 5. Or if you wanted to drop COG's funding down a little bit, you could maybe fund the others at around, you know, again, you can vary that around, but the average, if you were wanting to fully fund COG, and you may not, but I was just thinking because they're very careful in their ask. But I think the discussion about you guys want to, how are the scores reflected in your thoughts on these agencies, and are they meeting the consolidated plan goals? And I'm still trying to find the sheet that has those consolidated plan goals.
If we funded, just to, I thought you could fund Albany Helping Hands and Jackson Street Youth Services and the COG, those 3, they would all fully be funded. But that adds up to about 52,000.
So you're,
So let's look at a scenario then where we're fully funding those and then do any partial funds as backups of those. As an example.
That would put those, funding those 3 fully, does put you right where, just a little over, what we think we have.
Right. So the question then is, if we all agree to that, then if we that's kind of the priorities, then we would have to, any other additional monies would have to be carved out of those for those other.
I like that.
Well, what are your priorities? Is it serving the homeless in the shelters? Because, I mean, except for, you don't have to fund the Cascades West Council of Governments project, that's a little different. It's serving seniors, you know, homebound seniors and helping them maybe stay homebound and not become homeless. But you've got COAT is also trying to serve homeless. I mean, it's just, if you're looking at the greatest needs, is it at shelters or is it, you know, what are the services that are providing the greatest needs or addressing the greatest needs, sorry. But I think that's a good way to start. I really appreciate that.
Code is in the woods, you know, they go where the people are. And that, I think, is a plus for them. Although they could be partially funded and still run their program. They're just looking for help, I think, with their outreach. At the two people who are out in Simpson Park, you know, and way and Tequila Landing, and then way out in the 10th Bowman Park. Yeah. So they could easily have a partial funding, I think.
You have a suggestion on what that partial amount would be?
Well, if you did half, then there'd still be money for what would that be, Jackson Street?
So it needs to lose about 12,000 from this.
So then you take Jackson down to 18.
A question I had about Jackson Street, was there a threshold there? Are they just you're trying to match the staffing with the number of people that they have, and there may be threshold where if they don't get the 30,000, they're not gonna meet the threshold. That's just I don't know the answer to that, but that's my question. Good question.
Just so that they were working on their program.
The rating, I mean, threshold.
My notes say that a lot of the funding goes to personnel,
Yeah, one staff
and then they
per
would
10 or
serve more youth.
So are they not allowed to have that additional 10 beds open because of the one personnel?
But, oh, no,
They don't have-
it's just, no, they have, I mean,
They got funds, but
Yeah,
they're still
really.
trying to work down.
yeah, I don't think that, I mean, they're still gonna be providing that.
That's what my last note said, yeah, they
They're
could go
really-
on.
They're
if
a
they
really
didn't
strong
get it.
organization and it's reflected in, you know, they do fundraising, but they also apply for money and they have other sources of funds and they've just been in business for a long time, so they're good at what they do and they're good at
Yeah.
securing funding, so.
Like what they're doing right now, asking
Yeah,
for
yeah.
a great grant.
They have, this is the first time their fund, they typically ask for around $20,000, and so it's been a little bit of a jump this year, but I mean, they do have more need. Oh, was it 2075? Yeah, so they're trying to serve more residents but not all of the residents are Albany residents. Sometimes they're, you know, from other Lake counties.
Well, yeah, and to me, the COG, the senior assisted is so important because these people have either worked, I mean, in their own
Taxes,
homes, they pay taxes, that, you know, they just need a little help now. And if it can, it just is so important. I mean, yeah, people are homeless, that's bad. But you have seniors who have to decide what to eat or not eat, or, you know, and they got the same bills as everybody else does. And to me, they need the help to just get somewhere. And that is so important to me. It's a lot more important, I think, than, the Y or even COAT. I mean, you know, one thing I heard about COAT is that they actually, I mean, they do a good service. I can understand that. But they take the food stuff, but they don't take any of the garbage and stuff back that they put there. So that is,
Everyone's a burden.
you know, and it makes, if they could take the trash can and say, okay, you get this, but give me all your trash back. That type of a thing, like, you know, even here, because
Has that been suggested, you know?
Yes, it has.
has it? I don't know, but I mean, it just.
I brought that.
I suggested.
Because so the thing is, they deliver stuff and then not take anything with them, so that's just more stuff
Right, yeah.
that
Pack it in, pack it out.
the city has to clean up as far as, or whoever goes out and does the cleanup.
Yeah.
I think, and you know, my life with seniors, I don't see why we would not fund COGS. Because I work with that population on a daily basis, and I've had ones with money, I have ones that are literally one missed medication away from being homeless or deceased. And so anything I can do for them to help them, I'll definitely support.
Well, then-
Which one are you talking about?
COGS,
That's leverage.
Senior assistant.
Okay,
senior assistants, yeah.
Because the volunteers are doing the work. This is just to help them with gas.
Right.
Exactly.
So just to help them, help other people.
Very leverage.
Right.
I'm gonna
Well-
have, just because she's had her hand up there, Dean, Commissioner Dean, would you like to say something as well?
Is that to me?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, my audio is really bad. So I love what COG's doing, right? Like, one, they're creating community for seniors that are in housing, but also they're acting as first line of defense. Like, if there's an issue or a concern, hopefully they're able to share that with another agency, which hopefully, like, we're helping keep people healthy, but we're also helping avoid people, our seniors becoming houseless. And so, I mean, $4,000 to create community for our seniors and to really have eyes on a vulnerable population of people that are already in housing to hopefully try to help keep them there. I think it's really good.
So is there general consensus that COG is gonna be funded?
Yes.
fully?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so that's.
Let's double their funding and.
Yeah, let's do it.
We'll take a bio break, be right back.
That's decided, so.
another approach that we could take is the COG, 4,000 for them, 18,800 for Helping Hands, 20,000 for COAT, and then whatever is left, the excess that we get in block grant funds over that amount would go to Jackson Street Youth.
But, you know, I think it would be useful to go back and look at how these were ranked, right? And say,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
because you could start with COG and say, let's fully fund them. And it turns out if we funded everybody at 4,000, that wouldn't use all of our money, right? So we could say that's kind of a baseline, which meets that goal, and then distribute the rest of the funds based on kind of how they ended up being
Weighting.
ranked. Because we've actually kind of been talking almost at odds to somehow some of the ranking came in, and that is, should
We
be.
are educating ourselves
Yeah,
as
I
we
think this is
go.
really, no, this is
But
good.
I
This
think,
is
I
good.
do agree that the way weighting of the score should have some weight. Absolutely.
Well, and I know that not everyone has had a chance to score the application, so, but I mean, I think if you can collectively agree on your ranking of them, the scores would maybe tend to follow the ranks, and it might be hard to do that, but that's one thing we've done in the past is
Yeah.
score, and then based on the scores, rank, and then what you wanna do, but I mean, I like that approach, and it's been used in the past,
That would be,
but I mean, again, I think, do you wanna fund the lowest rank one, and then you can look at, well, what's left if we're only funding 5 out of 6, or, the 4 out of the after COG, and so.
Because those of us that have scored, it looks like we have scored the ones we were talking about the highest.
Pretty close.
although interestingly, we've had Albany Helping Hands, which I think that's good stuff, but they were the only ones other than COG that was fully funded, right? And yet they weren't necessarily the highest
Yeah.
rated
One
one.
of the suggestions in that.
Right. So
It doesn't have
that
to
would,
stay that way. So
Right.
it's- Yeah.
Yeah, I
oh yeah,
saw,
so having them listed in terms of their ranking would be a good starting point.
This is the
Okay,
ranking of the public service,
Based on the current score.
based on what I receive for scores. It's not.
Okay, so if you were wanting to try to fund everybody a little bit, or let's just say you fund 5 out of the 6, if you funded COG fully at 4,000 and you had 4 remaining, the average grant would be 11,500, which is, a fair amount for, most of the grants average around 10 to 12-ish thousand. Sometimes we get up to maybe up to 20. It just, again, it depends on the scoring process that's happened in the past. So.
I mean,
But that, you know, you can look at, that's just the average, but if you're looking at distributing $46,000, how do you want to distribute the remaining $46,000 if you want to show good faith for, certain programs now? I mean, one thing about the Boys and Girls Club, they are trying to reach the Latino community, which can be done. Those residents they are served by all the other organizations that are applying for money, but I mean, these are just things to think about when we're thinking about the underserved and needs. Unfortunately, I look back to the strategic or the consolidated plan, and it's not really specific. I mean, the goals are the general, but we typically have a goal, you know, reduce homelessness. There's a way to increase affordable housing stock, and then support low and moderate income people, support economic opportunities, and then housing rehab. So the public services are mostly lumped into one goal, and all the applications are doing that, but because our needs aren't really, you know, underneath this goal, we've got the way that the way the plan is laid out with it's a format that HUD gives us. It doesn't really say this is our highest priority underneath public services. And that's where next year you guys can go, you know what, our highest priority might be, after you've heard from different agencies involved in this process, we want to address the homelessness problem. And maybe you would just really, anything that relates to homelessness, we'll do that. Or, you know, it could be two priorities, homelessness and childcare or something like that, you know, I don't know. So, but this year we don't have that specific,
We kind of talked about it, and there wasn't a sense that there was one priority that really stood out among the different priorities, and so kind of like we'll go in with treating all of these equally. Of course, that makes it, you know, it's a challenge now. So
I'm just, after hearing everything you guys just said and listen to everybody, like I just have a thought, like we have a service with these funds to instill hope back into the community. There's not one that's more important than the other. They're all serving things that other people don't see. So my mind is like, if there's one that stands out that we're like, this just doesn't line up with anything that we're doing, there's no reason, you know, it would not make sense for us to give our money to that. If we don't have any of those, then someone going through the effort and the work and applying and presenting, I like that idea of splitting the pot and giving a percentage, a portion based on our scores or whatever to everybody. That's just my last final thought.
So
Yeah,
That's
personally.
what's your next meeting?
well, our next meeting is in March
18th.
but we could have a meeting before then to continue
I
this.
think we need
I
to.
think because I have an obligation and this discussion is too important for me to walk out on, and
Yeah, we'll appreciate that.
yeah.
So,
Fourth work, March 4th.
so if we did it the first Monday at this time, and then we could get your list of things that you might want more information about or information presented in a way that'd be helpful for you. And we can get that mail back out a week before, and then we'll try to get additional scores in, and maybe we'll ask for scores and range, and we'll figure out how to, you know, do that. And if that will help make a final decision at the next meeting. And we might know our number by then. It's hard to say. It's just been running really late, especially if the government didn't end up shutting down, but you know, all those things sort of create delays and there's just, yeah.
I've got a real quick question. I'm sure I know, you probably know the answer to. So, for the non-public schools, the 217, we only have asked for 189. Is the variance in that 20 some, can that will the Parks Department apply for that again,
We
or?
can see if there's a way that they could use it. Another option is just overfunding some of these. I
Okay,
know that part of it did mention that if they got additional funding from somewhere, that they could use it for locks on the door, so that's one consideration, but.
oh, overfunding, yeah.
I think-
So, but we can see if there's a parks project that could use that amount too.
Okay,
Yeah, it's the challenge with the funds is even a little bit of CDBG money may cause the whole project to be subject to standards and rules that they don't want to. But I think that we could find out how much it would cost for Carter to have the locking doors. I definitely request could probably use more money, you know, for I don't remember how many homes they're averaging and if they have a wait list, but I think you could find someone who must have a wait list, so that might help you in figuring out that, you know, how to allocate the difference and.
It's like 20-some thousand.
Kind of like doing the opposite. Of community. We ask if you use
Use
more.
more, yeah.
It's about special, because they might say that, like I know Denver West in past years, they've said, well, we can do this many houses to go from staff capacity we have, and so having more funding doesn't necessarily mean we can crank them out faster, and so
Sure.
getting a sense of where their staff capacity on that could be helpful.
Yeah.
I can listen to the minutes from January 22nd, I think was where most of the public service agencies presented. Helping Hands presented at the most recent meeting. But I could go through, because I think the question was asked, you know, what would you do if you weren't fully funded? And we could maybe try to just take notes on that if that's what you as well. And then we just have to keep in mind that a lot of agencies, and I think they know that we don't have as much money available as what they ask for. They ask for more than what we have available.
It's just
And I
strategy.
just feel like that, yeah, I mean, it's sort of a strategy and just have to take that into consideration, and maybe what those answers were will help you realize, yeah, any amount of funding would be helpful. So we can try to narrow that down if that helps you guys, if you decide you want to give everybody a little bit or not, you know, at least you know whether a little bit will be worthwhile. And there's a lot of work, I mean, it's work on our end to
Right.
get in a contract with all these agencies. So, you know, there's fewer being strategic is sometimes a good thing, you know, for us on the management side, but what we really want to make sure that we're doing what's needed in the community and what your direction is, so.
Daniel
Oh,
has their hand raised.
Yes, that.
Who does?
The very next thing is business from the public.
Daniel?
so, Yeah,
Am I saying something?
Business from the public?
yeah, so there's someone, that's joined us
So,
virtually, and I
great.
want to give them a chance to.
Well, do you want to wait for business from the public and then, okay, so we're not gonna talk about the fair housing management.
I think they will.
Don't have time,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
Table for it.
So do we have any business from the public? I see a hand from Daniel.
Hey, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Hey, yeah, so I got here a little bit late. I was curious, looking at these numbers here, is there a reason why the non-public service total is so high compared to everything else?
The non-public service total reflects what's remaining after the caps that we have for the other categories. And so we only have 15% that we're allowed to use on public services from our allocation. And so I've deducted what we have for that total, and then what we have for our admin total, so that pays for running the program. And then the remainder is that non-public service total.
So
Is that
who was that?
question?
Yeah.
Who's that?
It's on the screen, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't see that. Where's it from?
He's the public.
That's good, we have.
He's Albany resident? That's good.
Thanks for coming, Daniel.
Yeah, we really
Yeah, of
appreciate
course. Can I ask where's the 15% coming from? Is that like a law in Albany that we have, or like an ordinance or
It's
something?
not law in Albany, so this is funding that we received from the Housing and Urban Development Department with the federal government, and it's a rule that they
Okay.
have this funding.
I see. Okay.
Fair.
Okay.
Yeah. Same.
Thank you for the explanation. I appreciate it. Sorry for being here. I got here a bit late, like I said.
We're glad you could join
Yeah,
us.
thank you
Greg.
so much for coming.
Thank you.
Do we have any business from the commission?
So what about, maybe we can hear from you what information you might need. It seems like, I don't know, are people interested in us getting the DOJ report or not, to send out? I'm just going over my notes, but we will contact Denver Northwest about their wait list, and any of the non-public services, we'll talk to them about possibility of if could they use and how would they use additional funding. And then we can, were there any other applicants? Well, we'll go through, determine what the answers were. If you aren't fully funded, you'll be able to, what will happen, and we'll get that information for you. Is there anything else?
So I would have liked, if possible, on the spreadsheet at the top, what would they have, what they received last year, if they received last year?
Okay.
That'd be great.
And we can put in what their ask is, and we might also put in a cap, like, I mean, I just think it's a little, you know, if you're gonna do percentages, let's just have a percentage of something that isn't their top, you know, I mean, if you're trying to allocate money and thinking about that.
Yeah.
You might look at what the average is, and you might go a little above the average for some and a little below the average for others, or whatever, if you end up wanting to them, or even a portion, you can look at what the average is and just use that rather than thinking about the percentage of what they ask for, especially if they ask for more than we actually have, so.
That makes sense.
Yeah, we can put more information on one page so you can see it and, print it out and, yeah.
So our next scheduled meeting is March 18th, but we might have a March 4th.
We'll have a bunch.
We will have a
Yeah.
March 4th.
We will have more short.
Fourth at noon.
Okay.
Notice March 4th.
Yes.
Great. And then,
Hey, so Ron, Mike, so.
I will I'll be packing about my plane leaves on the 5th. So it will.
Nice.
okay,
Well done.
at 1:20, call this meeting to.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right.